Whether you fail or succeed, you're going to die. Do what you got to do. I was managing Alice Cooper and Blondie and 20 major acts. We have to do something that nobody else would do. Our story was that parents would hate Alice. We started hanging them. That was a cultural revolution. I was way too successful. A lot of blow. I'd married a playmate. I was having a great time in the moment, but when I pulled back from the moment, Jimmy had died, Janice had died, Jim Morrison died. I was headed for that wall. There was no question about it. My passion was drugs, and then I found cooking. Cook for the Dalai Lama. Oh my God, it's like I pinch myself. I really found my passion, my meditation. It was being of service, being proud of who you are. When you live on the edge, you got to fail sometimes. And I think so many people live in fear of failure that they don't take career choices, they don't take life choices. Failure, it's just one step closer to success. Embrace it all.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of. This week on the show, we have Shep Gordon, the legendary American talent manager, Hollywood film agent, and producer. You would have seen him in the documentary film Supermensch, produced by his good friend, the famous actor Mike Myers. And Shep has been there and done that. Back in the day, he was hanging out with Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Groucho Marx, and he was the first manager of Alice Cooper. And he tells incredible stories about how he turned Alice from what was really nobody into this huge guy that would sell out stadium shows. And he tells amazing stories of when they came to London and he painted the side of a truck with Alice naked with a snake in order to sell tickets, and it worked. And Shep has just an amazing energy about him. He lives in Hawaii now, and he's also responsible for the creation of the celebrity chef concept, and he's actually cooked food for the Dalai Lama. This man has a story about everyone. He does all of his business with a single handshake, no contracts, and I think you can learn a lot from Shep. I loved it. He's got a really warm energy, and he's just got an amazing story about what's important in life. And you know, I love it when people come here just like you to listen to this inspiration, but at London Real, we're all about taking action and transforming yourself, which is what we do inside London Real Academy. And whether you want to turn your passion into a business or learn how to public speak or broadcast yourself and start your own show like London Real, or even accelerate your life with amazing habits like meditation, movements, or a proper diet, we do it all inside the Academy. So come on in, check us out, and let me help you transform. And now I leave you with the legendary Mr. Shep Gordon. London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Shep Gordon, the American talent manager, Hollywood film agent, and producer. You've managed the rock star Alice Cooper for nearly 50 years, as well as Blondie, the Gypsy Kings, Pink Floyd, and fostered the career of Jimi Hendrix, Luther Vandross, and Groucho Marx. You're also responsible for creating the celebrity chef culture and business of today. You're featured in the documentary film Supermensch, The Legend of Shep Gordon, directed by your friend Mike Myers, and last year published your memoir, which debuted on the New York Times Bestseller List. Your mantra is create history, don't wait for it to happen. Shep, welcome to London Real.
Nice to be here.
Great to have you. London, what does this town mean to you? I'm always curious when someone comes here, what are some of the memories or things that you associate this town with?
London really significant in my career, because this is really where Alice broke. This was the purest break of Alice. He was unknown, and we had made enough headway in America that we had the resources to tell the story we wanted to tell. And we knew what our story was. Our story was that parents would hate Alice. And we were able here to have the resources to hire PR people who could put that out. By the time we came here, we had a record company who could put it out. Luckily for us, there was a government that was very reactionary. So where it was beyond our wildest dream, although it was our probably biggest dream, would be to get banned in England. Because if you're banned for what we were trying to do, that's the highest place you can get to. And a lady named Mary Whitehouse brought up in Parliament banning Alice, and it made the front page of the papers, and he exploded. So it's always been a great city to us.
Was that common knowledge that if you got your artist banned, they would make it? Or is that something that only Shep knew, or you and Alice knew?
I think, because
that's guerrilla marketing,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, we wanted to eat. We were hungry. And our skill set was sort of limited. At that time, the band was very much like a dolly painting in music that had a very limited appeal from the pure music of it. But the social phenomenon of it, of five guys named Alice Cooper, wearing dresses, doing things that parents hated, that was a cultural revolution that we were riding a wave of. And part of that cultural revolution, like for every generation, is children do what parents don't want them to do. I can remember in my life walking past my kid's bedroom hearing rap music for the first time. And I opened the door and, what is this crap? And as soon as I said it, I said, oh shit, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. Because that's the way it goes, Every girl in the world wears pink because none of the parents ever wore pink. It's just, it's everywhere, and it's just the way humans grow up. So for us, that was a much more identifiable path to success and being able to buy lunch than making records that appealed to these kids. That was tougher for us. That was a hard thing to get. So the political and social part of Alice was really what drove the machinery in the beginning. And England was the perfect test tube. And there was a fellow, the Beatles had come out of here, the Stones, there was a rock and roll infrastructure. So I got to a guy named Derek Taylor, who was the talked about as the fifth Beatle. He was their publicist. And I was able to have that conversation with intelligent people who knew what I was talking about. This is back in '70. And I said, he said, tell me about Alice Cooper. What is Alice Cooper? And I said, well, our goal is to get every parent in the UK at breakfast to say to their kid, if you go to that Alice Cooper concert, you're grounded for a month. I said, how do I do that? And he said, well, let's talk about it. And I said, well, is there anything, in America we had the Ed Sullivan Show. And I'm a big student of history. And Elvis Presley really broke nationwide because of the Ed Sullivan Show. He went on the Ed Sullivan Show. Every family got around the TV every Sunday night to watch Ed Sullivan. And they announced that they wouldn't be showing his hips. They only showed the upper half of his body because it was too sexual. And every parent turned off the TV. They didn't want their kids to watch it. And Elvis exploded overnight. And it was his manager who said, I'll only put him on the show if you won't show his hips.
So that was engineered.
Right. So that was in my brain.
Okay.
So I said to Derek, is there anything like the Ed Sullivan Show? What does every family sit around and watch? And he said, BBC Breakfast News. They watch it for traffic and they watch it for weather. And it's on every family's during breakfast when all the kids are going. It's on in every house.
That's all you got to work with.
That's what, so I went home that night. In the morning I got up, I watched the TV, and it was an amazing amount of helicopter traffic reports. Like every 5 minutes was a traffic report from a helicopter. So I came back into Derek and I said, I have this picture of Alice we just did where he's naked and his genitalia are covered by a snake.
A big boa or something.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So, like if I wanted to back up traffic, where would I go? And he said, well, probably the most traffic at rush hour in the morning is Piccadilly. There's this roundabout.
Yeah, Piccadilly Circus, yeah.
So I said, can you find me a driver? Let's blow this thing up and break down the truck at Piccadilly and get the helicopter to show a naked Alice on the traffic and have the families having their coffee. Oh my God, this is disgusting. A guy named Alice, naked at Piccadilly. So we broke it down twice. And that's when Mary Whitehouse tried to ban us.
You never thought that was going to come.
Never thought. That was like the greatest. I sent her flowers every day. That was like the greatest thing ever.
Did you ever think you went too far? Because if he gets banned...
No, can't go too far. We sold out 2 days later, we sold out. We were at Wembley, which we're back at
in a few days.
Few days, first time I think in 37 years.
That's great.
When we played Wembley last time, the ticket price was £1.50 because we just made a T-shirt up of the original ticket. But so England was, and it had, it was the only place in the world with paparazzi. They didn't exist. There was no system in the early days in America or anywhere else to get out your story in a picture and control it. Here they had Fleet Street. It was called Fleet Street. And Fleet Street was all these photographers, guys like Terry, sorry, Terry, I can't remember your name, but he's a genius.
Like independent photographer.
Yeah, who you could call up, like I would call up Terry, and I'd say, I have a new album coming. I need a shot around the world. What are we going to do? And one time he'd say, fly to London, bring that Cyclops with you, and come through customs, Alice holding the hand of the Cyclops. Because in those days there was no problems. So we flew to England, we got off the plane, we walked, the guy put on the uniform, Alice walked out with his hand. That picture went everywhere in the world, and then we got back on the plane and went home. Or 2 years later, I called him up, I needed it again, and he said, do you have a swimming pool? I said, yeah. He said, get a shark, get a plastic shark, I'll be there in 2 days. So he came out and he put Alice in the swimming pool with the shark, and Jaws came out that week. And we made Newsweek and Time and People, we made everywhere.
So you're hijacking the media.
Yeah,
you
ride the wave.
Okay.
You just ride the wave. George was going to be a wave, make Alice the face of that wave, and make Alice the face of angst, of kids' angst. Just like the Who did. except they did it, through their song, but My Generation, it's classic it's just, Frank Sinatra was a doper, no one would listen. Your parents told you not to go see him. Right. That's the way the world works. Same thing works in restaurants. It's exactly the same. You go to a restaurant now that's hot, and many of them don't take reservations. They have communal tables where you sit with other people. Could you imagine when we were young going to a communal table? Would there be anything worse in life?
No, and waiting in line to do it.
And waiting in line to do it. We hate it, so they love it.
Okay.
It's everything that's the way it works.
It's like marketing basic DNA.
I think it's the kids who don't rebel against their parents that end up being the ones who kill people or do something crazy. It's a natural evolution of that separation from your parents.
Right.
As a marketer, I could see that, and it was very easy for us to take advantage of it because that was the way it leaned anyway.
Okay. And no one else was doing what you were doing?
Nobody else was really consciously doing it.
Okay.
They were doing it unconsciously hurting themselves. So, Jim Morrison would fall off the stage. So he was so fucked up that kids loved him because they had that image where Janis Joplin was a drunk. And Rolling Stones, I remember my parents saying that they read that one of them urinated on a gas station. If you go see them, Alice got thrown out of school for growing his hair long like the Beatles. How many kids? Thousands of kids in America got thrown out of school for wearing their hair like the Beatles. It's just part of life.
Right, but you made a conscious decision to do it,
right,
as opposed to Jim Morrison, who was
exactly
slowly killing himself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And what do you remember about that gig in Wembley back in the early '70s when Alice was there, and how has this place changed, and how have you changed?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It was a really good gig. I don't remember it specifically, the gig. I remember everything leading up to the gig. My memory is sort of isolated. But I remember it was really exciting. But in those days, it was all moving so fast.
Okay.
It was and there weren't resources. Think about $1.50 as the top price for Wembley. Wembley held, I think, 12,000 people in that configuration, maybe 10,000 people. So the gross was 15,000 pounds. The gross. Right. So an artist would make maybe 5,000 pounds. Hotels, trucks, because you still need all that stuff. You got to eat, you got to sleep, you have to get there. So life was a constant hustle to get to the next thing, have enough money to pay this, do that. That was sort of my focus. So once the show came, my job was,
right,
I'm backstage on The Office trying to figure out how to bounce a check on somebody while they're doing the show.
And so you didn't have anything to lose. You were like, let's go.
We had nothing to lose.
And that probably is why also you can make those big, bodacious bets.
Yeah.
And you said earlier, you can never go too far.
You can't go too far. And you can go too far in things in life. I don't think you can't, with what I was doing with Alice, you couldn't go too far. I mean, we could have hurt somebody. That we would never do.
Right. But never anything too audacious.
Yeah, you couldn't get too out there.
Okay.
The more out there, the better.
And this press helped you back in the States as well.
Yeah, not as much as we would have thought, but it did.
Okay. You still working with Alice, almost 50 years, 40-some years.
50, yeah.
50, you guys working together.
50.
All on a handshake.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk about that concept of just doing business on a handshake? And do you think everybody should do business that way?
Yeah, no, it's, my entire career with my artists, I never signed contracts, but I never would do business with a third party for my artists without a contract, unless I really knew them well. So I think for what my job was and the way that I wanted to do my job, I couldn't have them obligated to be with me. They had to be with me because they trusted me and believed me. And I was very cocky in my abilities, and just dance to a different drummer. You know, I love the resources and the lifestyle my business gives me, but I was never willing to compromise for the money, and that's really what you have a contract for.
Right.
Is when that moment comes when, you know, it's not working and you still want to get paid. In my case, I didn't. I was very happy to, you know, I didn't have many artists I ended with, but when I did, I didn't want to. I had maybe a false ego about it. I don't need to take it, you know. So it got in the way. It always felt to me like it got in the way. I would hear so many artists talk about, my manager, shit, I have 3 more years with him. I never wanted to be that guy. You know, you don't want to be with me, just tell me. It's all good. It's all beautiful.
Because a contract, in your opinion, makes you make the wrong decisions at the wrong times.
Yeah.
It can.
I mean, what it does too is it also brings in more lawyers, and I didn't like the whole lawyer thing. And aggravation, I wasn't in this for aggravation. You know, I went through 1 lawsuit early in my life with Alice's record company, and that's not what I'm on the planet for, is to go, you know, do that stuff. So anything I could do in my own personal life to avoid it, I was really happy to not have that cloud the issue.
Okay. And the net effect was to build long-term brand value by making those right decisions in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
For that moment, and not because you had to be there.
Right.
And what I did really outrageous stuff with all my artists, you know, but that they wouldn't let me do it is pretty nuts. So I wanted them always to feel free, like they could just, you know, because not everything works. You only hear about the stuff that works. I put so many people in positions that, oh my God.
You said the key to your and Alice relationship was that you both, well, he gave you the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing.
Big thing.
Can you explain that concept?
I think I don't know anyone who's been successful who doesn't have who hasn't failed and had the ability to fail. And I think, you know, for safe doesn't work in marketing, in what I do, you know, which is smoke and mirrors to some extent. When I say that, you can't sell something that doesn't work. If Alice didn't have talent, it would have gone up and come down. Right. You can't make shit out of Shinola, as they say. And I love Shinola, by the way, my favorite
What
brand.
is Shinola, by the way?
Shinola is a new brand, the watch brand. But it was a shoe shine. It was a shoe polish.
Okay.
And it just became a saying, you can't make shit out of Shinola.
Right. So the talent was there eventually with Alice, but you do smoke and mirrors, which meant you're a showman.
Yeah.
Okay. But you have to have that opportunity to fail to be a great showman.
Yeah, to do stuff. I mean, you know, I think I don't know if I tell it in the movie or the book or something, the Cannon story with Alice.
Yeah.
But that's such a classic example of it didn't work. It was horrible. I put him in, you know, I could tell for your audience.
Yeah, tell us that story, because that's a perfect example of this.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. So I booked for Alice's first stadium show, 60,000 people, Pittsburgh, Three Rivers Stadium.
And this was big at the time. Not many people were doing it.
No one had ever played a stadium. The Beatles had played Shea Stadium.
Wow.
That was it.
60,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
1972, we did the biggest tour. There's a book out about the tours of 72. We were the #1 tour, Led Zeppelin #2, The Who was #3.
Wow.
So this was his moment. It was a frenzy. Every town we went to, they tried to ban us. The city council would try and ban us. Every town we went to, the ASPCA would show up to demand we didn't use a snake or not kill a chicken.
Well, that's a animal protection agency.
So we had picketers.
Okay. More free press from Shep.
No. So that's why it was gigantic.
Okay.
You know?
And this is why it's hard for you to remember things.
Yeah.
Because it was just so crazy.
Crazy.
The pedal was to the metal.
It was crazy. I'd be going to city council meetings, Binghamton city councils to plead my case.
But you're loving every minute of it.
But I wanted them to turn us down.
Okay.
Because if they said yes, that was horrible.
Okay.
So we booked the first stadium, and I'm thinking, okay, what would Alice Cooper do in a baseball stadium? we have to do something that nobody else would do. It's Alice Cooper.
Right. Because it's not obvious what he would do in such a big crowd.
Yeah, what would he do in a big?
And some of the things before that he was doing on stage was what?
Well, we chopping up baby dolls, getting executed.
Getting electrified at that point?
At that point, I think we started hanging them.
Hanging him.
Yeah,
Okay.
with the gallows.
Right. He told a story on Maron about hanging and the hanging went wrong.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah.
Is that thanks to you?
Yeah, oops.
Oh my gosh.
What could I do? Wait a second.
So you're
Baseball
just-
stadium? I'm going to shoot him out of a
Yeah.
cannon across the
So
stadium.
you're just a mad scientist in background. You're just kind of spending quiet
Smoking
moments
a lot of dope, taking some acid,
taking some acid, and just being alone probably and thinking, what?
alone a lot,
And just coming up with these
and
brainstorm
getting,
ideas.
trying to go as far out as I could and look back. So I would look back and okay, we're in the baseball stadium. The hanging is small. There were no screens or anything in those days.
Right.
What can I do that's big enough? What do I do that's big?
You're visualizing the whole
I'm
thing.
in the stadium. It's the end of the show. Can't do fireworks at that time. They wouldn't let them in stadiums. What do I do big? Wait a second. What if I do this gigantic drum roll, get like 20 drummers, and get them in a cannon, make it really dramatic, huge blast, shoot him out across the stadium, and have him show up at the other side of the stadium like triumphant. That's what Alice Cooper would do. So,
Had you seen this in a circus somewhere?
circus, yeah, Madison Square Garden in a circus. They shot
Okay.
They used to shoot the midgets
Okay.
out of the cannon.
All right.
So there was a guy who had built my props for me at Warner Brothers Film Studios. We were Warner Brothers Records.
Okay, so you could just go to the film studio and say, help me out.
They hooked me up. So I go to the guy who built our gallows, and guy with little half glasses at a desk, the drafting desk, maybe 65. I was 20, and hi, Bob, whatever his name was. I said, thank you. The gallows was fantastic. Thank you so much. It was really great. I said, Alice is going to be doing a baseball. He doesn't even look up at me. So I go, thank you. Alice can do a baseball stadium. I was wondering, do you think there's any mechanism we could shoot him out of a cannon across the stadium? And he says, what period cannon? What period cannon? And I said, what do you mean? He said, Confederate, World War I, World War II. I said, anything that'll shoot him out. And now I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I got this made. And he goes to a drawer, and he literally pulls out a blueprint for a cannon to shoot Alice across the thing. So and he's built 2 props for us already that both work. So in my brain, I don't even think there's a possibility it's not going to work. Done. I go back, I see Alice. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot you out of a cannon. He said, you can't shoot me out of it. I said, no, I'm going to shoot you out of a cannon. It's fantastic. The guy at Warner Brothers. He said, really? Am I going to fly? I said, no, it's a magic trick. I got it covered. It's going to be great.
And he trusts you, so it's cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be great. But I had learned very early in our careers, we couldn't get anywhere in LA. And we had this theory if we could get parents to hate us, but we couldn't even figure out how to get anyone to hear about us to get parents to hate us.
Okay.
So
It's weird sometimes in your own town.
Yeah, but there was no, we didn't have money. We didn't have a PR person. We didn't have. It was not. There were a million bands trying to make it. Everybody came to LA to try and make it in those days. It was 68, 69. What can I do to piss off parents? And I got it. I'll put them on stage naked, and I'll get them arrested for indecent exposure, and that should make the newspapers. 5 nude guys on Sunset Strip get arrested for being naked. Maybe we'll get some space. So I go to the guys and I tell them, they go, really? I said, yeah, I got you covered. So we get these clear plastic suits, maybe I'll last $200, and no underwear, and I go to a place called The Experience. I give the guy $50 to let Alice play, and he gets on completely naked. There's maybe 6 people in the room who all leave. And in those days, there were no cell phones. It was a phone booth. So I go to the phone booth, I call 911, and I say, I'm in a club, The Experience on Sunset. I have my 14-year-old girl with me here. This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. There's 5 naked guys who are all fags on the stage, because in those days that got the police. You said that word.
They got all.
Oh no, they went crazy. they're on stage. My daughter, this is the most disgusting thing, and hold on, sir, and I could hear her beep some. Is anybody near? And I hear sirens. I put the phone down. I come out. The police come running into the club. The clear plastic had fogged up from the heat of their bodies playing. You couldn't see anything. Oh. So the police left. So that night I learned you have to rehearse. That was my lesson.
Okay, what a great lesson.
That was my lesson.
Cheap lesson.
So I put 3 shows together to rehearse the canon.
Okay. How big's the canon?
40 feet long. I think it was 5 tons. It had its own 40-foot truck. Gigantic. And the first stage we played, because a baseball stadium, we could build a big stage, but it was Flint, Michigan, in a theater. I think the whole stage was 42 feet. So it was this giant thing. And the way I staged it was lights go out, torches get lit, the drummer goes to a snare drum around his neck. Alice goes in the cannon, crawls in the cannon first. Once he crawls in the cannon, the lights go down, the things, and they're marching towards the cannon, up the steps, because it's high, to the fuse. While that's happening, Alice has crawled out, and he's being driven around to the back of the hall, because the gag is it's a dummy. You give it enough time to get around, you shoot the dummy, and then he appears.
Right. And it's far distance, so he has to be driven over there. All right.
So he gets in, they light the fuse, huge explosion, spotlight hits the front of the cannon, the dummy comes out maybe 2 inches, it flops down. Alice can't see it, but there's no reaction from the audience. And he's up there, and there's nothing. Nobody's turned their head around to even see him. He comes back, he said, did that work? And I said, well, maybe the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. I said, what are we going to do? And I made the rookie mistake of advertising, see Alice get shot out of a cannon. I was so sure this guy was going to pull it off. So now we're on the air. I have the whole city, we're sold out, 60,000 people. He said, what are we going to do? I said, I'll figure it out, go to sleep, I'll figure something out.
So you recover from that show. There's nothing you can do with that show. It's
nothing you can do.
gone.
So I would go back to the hotel. In the hotel, they have fire extinguishers and glass on every floor. So I open one up and I take it out, and it's a foam one. Turn it upside down, you get white foam. So I get the crew, we pick up every fire extinguisher in the hotel. And Alice shows up the next day, said, what are we going to do? I said, I got it, it's going to be fantastic. You get on it. I said, I put 2 little balls down on the side with hair. It's now a giant penis.
The cannon is a penis.
Now it's a penis. You get on it and masturbate it. Lick it, rub it, just go crazy on it. Make love to this thing. And this foam's going to fly out like 200 feet, cover the first 30, 40 rows and come. It'll be fantastic. And he, really? I said, yeah, trust me, it's going to be fantastic. So get to the end of the show, he gets on it, he's rubbing it, he's licking it, he works so hard. It drops out 1 inch. There isn't a person in the place who has any idea what he's doing or what we're doing. But this time he can see it, and he comes up, he said, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. I said, you have no idea, I was watching, it's worse than you can even imagine. What are we going to do?
And he's not getting mad at you.
Oh no, never 1 second of anything.
You said you've never had an argument with him.
Well, we've had disagreements, but
right.
Not one. He never 1 second of what are you doing to me or anything. I said, what are we going to do? I said, I'll figure it out, but I'll figure it out.
Back into the hotel room, get the LSD out, the weed.
Back in the hotel, and what the fuck am I going to do? Excuse me, what am I going to do with this thing? We show up the next day, and he says, what are we doing? And I said, well, you know that little overnight bag that I had your assistant take? And he said, yeah. I said, I have a feeling, I'm not sure, but I have a feeling the cannon's going to blow up tonight when you're in it, and you may have to spend the night in the hospital. He said, you're kidding. I said, I'm not kidding. He said, am I going to get hurt? And I said, I don't think so, but I can't guarantee 100%. I have no other choice. It's the only thing we can do. I said, we got 60,000 people. And he said, what are we going to do? I said, I'm going to blow you up. You're going to go to the hospital. We're going to do a news conference from the hospital back to Pittsburgh. saying there may not be a show, there may be a show. And then you're going to go do the show, but you'll do it from a wheelchair with blood and nurses and doctors. And we're going to pull this thing off. It's going to be fantastic. And we did. And the show went on. We took 2 of the roadies, we dressed them as doctors, and they did a news conference outside the hospital. And it worked. The headline the next day was that only Alice Cooper would go from the hospital bed to do the show in a wheelchair for the city of Pittsburgh. And
so it was better than the canon ever could have been.
Ever could have been. Yeah. But that's, when you live on the edge, you got to fail sometimes.
Right.
And hope it's not publicly. But I've had a few. But, it's, when I did For Women Only with Teddy, every person in his life told him to fire me. Record company said, your career's over. Radio stations will never play you again if you say these concerts are for women only.
Right. It's Teddy Prendercast back in the day, and you said we're going to do women-only concerts.
Right. And everybody, his lawyer said, I'm going to resign if you do this. It's a civil rights issue. You're never going to get over this. I had everybody, promoters freaking out. And Teddy just would say to me, is it going to work? I said, this is going to work. This is going to work. And he said, go for it. And he just stood up to everybody. But I think if I had had a contract with him, it might have been different.
Okay. Maybe you would have made a different decision?
No, I think he might have made it. He would have felt that he had to do it.
Okay.
And when you have to do it, it's weird. So they all came to sort of expect it from me.
Okay. Yeah. How did the women-only shows go?
Greatest thing
I was trying to think about that this morning. I was like,
oh my God, it was the greatest thing ever. And we gave out.
Now, explain Teddy to people so they know if they know him.
Teddy was the Black Elvis.
Okay.
He actually, his last show was in England before his accident. He was just on the edge of the Black Elvis. Women went crazy for him. They went crazy. But his audience was basically a Afro-American audience. He hadn't moved over to the white audience. And I wanted every white woman in the world to see what was going on. So how do I tell the story of being a Black Elvis without being arrogant? How do you say that? How do you say it? And so my first thought was, wait a second, let me make the point by just being in a room, just letting women come in the room. So I have a snapshot. Women will say, holy shit, what the And then I said, well, how do I do that without being arrogant, but being really sexy? And everything I tried, every time I put a picture of him in the ad, it was horrible. It was like this arrogant guy saying, I'm the coolest guy in the world. And then one day it sort of hit me from a drug-induced state of putting a teddy bear in the ad with a little note saying, come spend the night with me, love Teddy. Make it really soft and cuddly. And then we gave out chocolate teddy bear lollipops to every woman so they could, lick them and chew them and eat them.
During the show. Wow.
And they sold out and they were fantastic. And really defined who he was.
Okay, because it was like a cult around those shows and word spread. And were you at those shows?
Oh, yeah.
What were they like?
They were frenzied.
Because the women,
it depends the city
no one was watching.
New York was really interesting because all the pimps were outside. So it was really weird. It was almost threatening. Huh. There are a lot of guys who were a little pissed off.
Okay.
But it was, a lot of fur coats, a lot of big hats, real
because their girls were watching?
No, because they dropped their girls off.
Okay, right.
And they were sort of pissed.
That's intense.
Yeah. All the other ones were just normal shows.
And what was it like on the inside with the frenzy?
Panties on the stage, crying, screaming, people taking off bras. It was...
Because their men weren't watching them. They could do whatever they want.
It was all women.
So they had one of the greatest times of their lives. They could let loose.
Oh, it was like, are you kidding me?
So tell me, how does a nice Jewish kid from Long Island get into the entertainment business?
I have no idea. Mine was completely by chance. I've never, for my artist, everything is very planned. For me, nothing at all. I'm not a music guy, so I wasn't drawn. It wasn't like, I have to be in the music business. I probably haven't listened to an album in 30 years. It's just not my thing. So I became a manager because it was a cover for selling drugs. That I went to LA as a probation officer, and it lasted one day. And in college, I was a dealer, and I checked into a motel at night after my one day as a probation officer and heard a girl screaming. I had just come from a jail. I was at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, which was a jail. That's where I was assigned. And so I thought maybe she was getting raped, and I ran down to help her and separated her. And she punched me. She was actually making love, not getting raped. And when I went down in the morning, it was Janis Joplin. And she was sitting with...
Can she punch?
Yeah, pretty good.
Looks
Didn't
like
kill me, but cut my lip. She was sitting with Jimi Hendrix and the Chambers Brothers and Jim Morrison. And I think a couple of guys maybe from Creedence Clearwater.
Wow.
And she introduced me, and I was very embarrassed at first. But then my mind said, oh my God, this is the greatest customers in the world for my drug dealing business. How lucky did I get? And
because they consume a lot and know people that do.
And have money.
And money, right.
And they live in the same place I live. I had checked in that night. So they became customers. And we all became friends. And at one point, Jimi Hendrix, I was, as you said, a middle-class Jew from Long Island. And Hendrix said to me, or Lester Chambers said, I started making some money. I'd maybe been there 7-8 weeks. Started making some money.
What were you selling?
I was selling acid.
Just acid?
Yeah, just acid.
Okay.
Maybe some hash.
Okay.
But basically acid. But started making some money. Didn't have transportation. Saw her like on a street somewhere for $800 or $600, a 1954 Cadillac limousine, black. It was the one with the tail. And I bought it for some crazy reason. And I had a partner, Joe Greenberg, and the two of us bought it. And when Jimmy said it, he said, what are you going to tell the police where you got the money to buy a limousine if they stop you? You can tell them you're a drug dealer? And I said, no one ever stopped me. I'm a middle-class Jew. They don't stop middle-class Jews. And he said, well, us, they stop. And he said, you need a front. And he turned to Lester Chambers and he said, do you still have those kids in your basement from Phoenix? And Lester said, yeah. And Jimmy said, would you give them $10 a week if they say you manage them and then you have a front? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So Alice walked in and said, I found a Jew to manage it. It'll give you $10 a week.
And that was Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
and
that started our thing. And then...
and you didn't even want to manage it first.
I loved the fact that everyone walked out on them and they weren't known because I wouldn't have to work. They were a front. I didn't want to band it. I didn't know what a manager even did. I had no idea. When they brought me a second act, they brought me Pink Floyd. Jimmy brought in Pink Floyd. And he said, you got to have more than one act. This is the greatest manager. He's going to get you gigs everywhere. When they left the room, I said, Jimmy wants a gig. That's how much I knew. It's amazing.
What was Jimmy like?
Jimmy was great. He was happy, in his own world. I got to know the Chambers Brothers the best. They were the most accessible. Jimmy just wanted to be with a girl and get a buzz and play his guitar.
Okay.
Chambers Brothers, and those were the ones that I really interacted with.
Okay.
Even to this day, Lester, I like to think is a really good friend. I know his kids, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
How much did the drugs affect the culture then? As in, it was kind of an LSD and maybe a marijuana culture before the kind of cocaine came in. Did it change how people related to each other?
I would say the biggest change was the awareness that there were consequences. None of us had any awareness of consequences. It was all fun and games. Keith Moon would get so drunk he couldn't walk. That was funny. None of us ever thought about livers, dying of alcoholism, drunk driving. Same thing with sex. There was no AIDS. So sex was, there were no consequences. Nobody that we knew had OD'd on drugs. You got too high, you got a little fucked up, so I think the biggest change came when we all started to say, holy shit, there's consequences to this. There are real consequences. And that was probably at the end of the 70s.
Okay.
For me, was the biggest change. I mean, I abused past that point. But I think that's when the mood changed from it becoming a whim to a way of life.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
When I got to meet His Holiness, the same thing, and I started to see the people that were really happy, which is, you know, I want to be happy. It's selfish. And the path to being happy is being of service. And it sort of works. And the cooking, when I started cooking with them, I realized that was, I found the passion. I never had a passion. I don't listen to music. I don't watch movies. I don't really read much. So I didn't have a passion. My passion was drugs. You know, got a blind moment, take a toot. And then I found cooking through him, and that I really found my passion, my meditation.